Hello, friends. Welcome to English Minds, where knowledge meets empowerment. Today, on International Women's Day, we can together to celebrate the brilliance, resilience, and transformative contributions of women throughout history, from Hypatia groundbreaking intellect to Virginia Woolf, fearless word, and Marie Curie, scientific triumphs. Women have shaped the very foundation of human progress. Yet, challenges remain. True equality is not just an aspiration, it is a necessity. At English Minds, we believe that education, leadership, and opportunity should transcend gender. So, today we don't just celebrate, we commit to change. Let's champion a world where talent, no identity, defines success. Stay with us as we dive into the powerful conversation. Happy Women's Day. Hello friends, welcome to English Minds. Today we will discussing on remaining part 5 John Milton top 500 essential series. Very first question. According to Wordsworth, sonnet on Milton, what quality of Milton's soul is highlighted? Option B. It was like a star and dwelt apart. In his sonnet London 1802, Wordsworth described Milton's soul as like a star and dwelt apart. The metaphor highlights Milton's moral superiority, RIORITY, superiority, wisdom and unwavering principles. वर्ड्सवर्थ ने अपनी सोनेट लंदन 1802 में मिल्टन की आत्मा को एक तारे की तरह जो सबसे अलग रहता है कहा. This metaphor highlights Milton's moral superiority, wisdom and unwavering principles. यह उपमा मिल्टन की नैतिक श्रेष्ठता, ज्ञान और अडिग सिद्धांतों को दर्शाती है. He is portrayed as someone who exists above the corruption of his time, embodying purity and righteousness. वे अपने समय की भ्रष्टता से परे एक शुद्ध और धार्मिक व्यक्ति के रूप में दिखाए गए हैं. नेक्स्ट. Which of the following qualities is attributed to Milton in the passage? Option C. A steadfast will and fixed purpose. Milton is depicted as a poet with a strong, unwavering will and a clear sense of purpose. Unlike poets driven by fleeting emotions, he maintained discipline in his poetic themes, focusing on grand, structured ideas like morality, divinity, and justice. मिल्टन को एक दृढ़ निश्चयी और निश्चित उद्देश्य वाले कवि के रूप में दिखाया गया है. वे उन कवियों की तरह नहीं थे जो क्षणिक भावनाओं से प्रेरित होते हैं, बल्कि उनके काव्य में अनुशासन और महान विचारों का प्रतिबिंब दिखता है, जैसे नैतिकता, धर्म, न्याय, मोरालिटी, डिविनिटी एंड जस्टिस. मोरालिटी, डिविनिटी एंड जस्टिस. Next, how does the passage Contrast. Shakespeare and Milton. Option B. Shakespeare is depicted as the poet of impulse, while Milton is the poet of steadfast will. This passage contrasts Shakespeare and Milton by portraying Shakespeare as a poet who captures human emotions and spontaneity, whereas Milton represents a firm, deliberate purpose in his poetry. Shakespeare reflects the changing passions of his time, while Milton remains steadfast in his themes and ideals. इस तुलना में शेक्सपियर को एक ऐसे कवि के रूप में दिखाया गया है जो मानवीय भावनाओं की और सहजता को व्यक्त करते हैं, जबकि मिल्टन को एक दृढ़ और सुविचारित उद्देश्य वाला कवि माना गया है। शेक्सपियर अपने युग की बदलती भावनाओं को दर्शाते हैं, जबकि मिल्टन अपने विचारों और आदर्शों में अडिग रहते हैं। नेक्स्ट, what does the passage suggest about the major influences on Milton's poetry? Option C. A strong sense of duty and fixed purpose. Milton poetry is driven by a strong moral sense and an unwavering commitment to grand themes like justice, duty, and divine purpose. Unlike romantic poets who focus on momentary emotions, Milton's works such as Paradise Lost reflect structure, thought, and a higher calling. मिल्टन की कविता एक गहरी नैतिक भावना और कर्तव्य बोध से प्रेरित होती है। वे न्याय, धर्म और ईश्वरीय उद्देश्य जैसे महान विषयों पर केंद्रित रहते हैं। रोमांटिक कवियों के विपरीत, जो क्षणिक भावनाओं पर ध्यान केंद्रित करते हैं, मिल्टन की रचनाएं पैराडाइज लॉस्ट जैसे संरचित और उच्च विचारधारा को दर्शाती है। नेक्स्ट, what does the passage imply about Shakespeare poetry? Option B. It reflects the love, hates, fears, and ambitions of his age. Shakespeare's poetry is deeply connected to human emotions and the societal condition of his era. His works explores love, ambition, power, and existential struggle, making them a reflection of the hope and fears of Renaissance society. शेक्सपियर की कविता मानवीय भावनाओं और उनके युग की सामाजिक परिस्थितियों में से गहराई से जुड़ी हुई है। उनकी रचनाएं प्रेम, महत्वाकांक्षा, शक्ति और अस्तित्व के संघर्षों को दर्शाती है, जिससे वे पुनर्जागरण काल की आशाओं और आशंकाओं का प्रतिबिंब बनती है। Which phrase from Wordsworth's sonnet best describe Milton's voice? Option C. Whose sound was like the sea. London 1802. Wordsworth described Milton's voice as whose sound was like the sea. The simile highlights the power, depth, and vast influence of Milton's words, much like the sea, which is constant, vast, and commanding. According to the passage, how does Milton view the changing emotions and impulses of the world? Option B. As a trivial and momentary. Milton is depicted as someone who does not get swayed by the fleeting emotions and changing impulses on the world. Instead, he focuses on eternal truth and higher moral values, considering worldly passions as temporary and insignificant. Which of the following statement best summarize the comparison between Shakespeare and Milton? Option A. Shakespeare represents human emotions while Milton represents divine purpose. Shakespeare's works are deeply rooted in human emotions, exploring love, ambition, jealousy, and other aspects of human nature. In contrast, Milton's poetry focuses on grand divine themes and exploring morality, justice, and religious ideals. Next, in Wordsworth's sonnet on Milton does the phrase cheerful godliness suggests about Milton. Option B. He balanced spiritual depth with a positive outlook. The phrase is cheerful godliness means हर्षित धर्म परायणता. हर्षित धर्म परायणता. The phrase cheerful godliness in Wordsworth's sonnet suggests that Milton was deeply spiritual but not in a stern or rigid way. Instead, his faith was uplifting, hopeful, and balanced with a sense of joy and moral conviction. Next, what literary role does the passage attributed to Milton? Option A: a poet who explored only political themes. No. Option C: a poet who upheld steadfast purpose and divine will. Milton is celebrated as a poet who, with a fixed purpose, deeply committed to moral and divine themes. His works, especially Paradise Lost, reflect his unwavering belief in divine justice, duty, and human responsibilities. According to the passage, what distinguished Milton's approach to literature? Option B: his belief that a poet must first develop an ideal character before writing. Milton believed that a poet must cultivate personal virtue and moral excellence before creating great literature. He emphasized that inner purity, discipline, and wisdom were essential for writing meaningful and noble works. His idea was that literature should be a reflection of a poet's character. What does Milton believe is essential for a poet to write laudable things? Option C: a disciplined and enlightened soul. Milton believed that to write laudable things means praiseworthy works. Praiseworthy worthy works. A poet must possess a well disciplined mind and a soulful enlightened by wisdom and virtue. He saw poetry as a serious moral endeavor rather than just an artistic expression. His work affected this deep sense of discipline and spiritual purpose. Option C is correct answer. A disciplined and enlightened soul. The passage contrasts Milton with Shakespeare and his contemporaries by emphasizing option B. Milton combination of Renaissance culture with Puritan moral earnestness. Milton is often described as blending the artistic and intellectual richness of the Renaissance with the strict moral and religious seriousness of Puritanism. Unlike Shakespeare and his contemporaries, who focused on human passions and worldly themes, Milton's works were deeply infused with religious purpose and moral gravity. Next, what is suggested as the secret of Milton's life and writing? Option B. His belief that inspiration and understanding come from the Almighty. Milton believed that true inspiration and wisdom come from God. His works, especially Paradise Lost, reflects his view that divine guidance is essential for literary greatness. He considered poetry a divine calling rather than a mere creative pursuit. Which praise from the passage best describe Milton's writing style? Option D. A composition and pattern of the best and most honorable things. Milton's writing is often described as embodying the highest ideals of morality, virtue, and honor. His literary style was structured, purposeful, and aimed at uplifting humanity. His work were not just about beauty, but about moral and philosophical depth. Next, why does the passage state that Milton experienced long silence in his writing career? Option B. The spent years in deep study, meditation, and spiritual discipline. Milton's long silence were not due to writer's block, but rather a period of intense study, contemplation, and personal growth. He believed that a poet must first cultivate wisdom and virtue before writing, which is why he spent years preparing himself intellectually and spiritually. What does the passage imply about Milton's relationship with the Renaissance? Option B. He lived during its decline but was still influenced by its literary masters. Milton lived at a time when the Renaissance was in decline, but its influence, particularly in literature and humanism, shaped his work. He admired figures like Dante, Petrarch, and classical Roman poets while integrating Puritan moral seriousness into his writings. How does the passage describe the connection between Milton's poetry and spirituality? Option B. His writing was deeply influenced by his belief in divine inspiration. Milton saw poetry as a divine calling. He believed that true literary greatness came from divine inspiration and that a poet needed to be morally upright and spiritually enlightened to write works of lasting value. His epic Paradise Lost is a prime example of this belief. Which literary figure is mentioned in the passage as part of Renaissance tradition? Option B. Option C. Ben Jonson. Ben Jonson was an important figure of English Renaissance, known for his plays and poetry. He was a contemporary of Shakespeare and influenced many later writers, including Milton, who respected his literary craftsmanship. What does Milton mean when he states he that would hope to write well hereafter in laudable things ought himself to be a true poem? Option A. A writer should live a life that embodies virtue and moral excellence. Milton's statement means that a poet's life should be as noble and virtuous as their writings. He believed that great poetry could only come from someone who lived by the ideals of wisdom, morality, and discipline. How does the passage describe Milton's presence in literature? Option B. As a distant ideal, like a lofty mountain on the horizon. Milton is often perceived as an intellectual and literary giant whose works are profound and difficult to fully grasp. His writing is elevated and philosophical, making him seem like a towering, distant figure in literature, much like a mountain or the on the horizon admired but not easily accessible. What was the John Milton's father's profession? Option A C. A scrivener, a kind of notary. John Milton's father was a scrivener, a profession that involved writing legal documents, financial transactions, and other classic clerical work. Despite his legal profession, he was also an admirer of literature and music, which influenced Milton's early education. What is said about Milton's father's political and religious beliefs? Option B. He was a radical Puritan and in politics and religion. Which qualities of Milton's mother are highlighted in the passage? Option B. She had refinement, social grace, and deep religious interest. Milton's mother was known for her refined manners, strong religious beliefs, and kindness. She played an essential role in nurturing his early religious education and moral values, helping shape his spiritual depth. What cultural influence shaped Milton's upbringing? Option A. The Renaissance and early Puritanism. Milton grew up at a time when Renaissance humanism was still influential, emphasizing classical education, literature, and artistic expression. At the same time, Puritan ideals of moral discipline and religious devotion shaped his beliefs, resulting in a unique fusion of both influence in his work. What is the elder Milton's approach to his son's education? Option B. He rejected contemporary educational method and took personal charge of Milton's training. Milton's father believed in a rigorous and well-rounded education beyond conventional schooling. He personally supervised his son's studies, ensuring that Milton was exposed to classical literature, music, and theological studies, fostering his intellectual and artistic growth. Next, according to the passage, what was Milton most eager to learn? Option B. The studies, ideals, and poetry within Greek and Latin literature. Milton was deeply passionate about the philosophical, poetic, and literary traditions of Greek and Latin writers. He was not merely interested in grammar, but in the deeper message and ideals conveyed in classical works. At what age is Milton described as already a scholar in spirit? Option B. 12 years old. By the age of 12, Milton was already recognized as a serious scholar, showing exceptional dedication to learning. His early mastery of multiple languages and literary forms demonstrated his scholarly spirit. Next, which famous philosopher views on education did Milton's father seem to share? Option B. Option C. Francis Bacon. Milton's father shared Bacon's belief in broad humanistic education. Bacon emphasized the importance of knowledge, reasoning, and intellectual exploration, ideas that influenced the elder Milton approach to his son. Next, what does the passage imply about Milton's role in English literature, literary history? Option B. He was both the heir of the Renaissance and the prophet of the Puritan era. Option B is correct answer. Milton's works reflect both Renaissance humanism and Puritan moral vision. His deep appreciation for classical literature, a hallmark of the Renaissance, cons- contrast with his strong commitment to religious and moral ideals, making him a transitional figure between the two periods. What were the two guiding principles of Milton's career? Option B, love of beauty and steadfast devotion to duty. Milton's career was guided by two key principles: his deep appreciation for artistic beauty as seen as in his poetry, and his strong sense of moral and civic duty as reflected in his political writings. He believed that literature should not should not be only aesthetically pleasing but also serve a higher moral purpose. Option B is correct answer. Which school did Milton attend before entering Christ College, Cambridge? Option B, St. Paul's School, London. Before attending Christ College, Cambridge, Milton studied at St. Paul School in London. This institution, this institution provided him a strong foundation in classical languages, literature, and rhetoric, which greatly influenced his later work. What was Milton's most notable poetic work during his university years? Option C. On the morning Christ Nativity. On the morning of Christ Nativity, during his university years, Milton wrote on the morning of Christ Nativity a poem that demonstrated his mastery of neoclassical poetic techniques and deep religious devotion. It was one of his earliest major poetic works and showed him promise as a great poet. Which Renaissance poet had the greatest influence on Milton? Option B. Edmund Spenser. Among Renaissance poets, Edmund Spenser had a greatest influence on Milton. Spenser's work, particularly the Fairy Queen, inspired Milton's poetic style, use of allegory and grand themes of virtue, morality, and heroism. Next, why did Milton refuse to take orders in the Church of England? Option B. He considers ordination an oath of servitude and valued mental liberty. Milton refused that to take order in the Church of England because he believed that it would limit his intellectual freedom. He saw ordination as an oath of servitude, servitude that would force him to conform to church doctrines, rules, which he rejected in favor of independent thought and personal conscience. मिल्टन ने चर्च ऑफ इंग्लैंड में पादरी बनने से इनकार कर दिया क्योंकि उसे लगा कि उन्हें लगा कि इससे उनकी बौद्धिक स्वतंत्रता सीमित हो जाएगी। वे इसे गुलामी की शपथ मानते थे, जिससे उन्हें चर्च की शिक्षाओं का पालन करने के लिए बाध्य होना पड़ता, जबकि वे स्वतंत्र विचार और व्यक्तिगत विवेक को प्राथमिकता देते थे। To which religious group did Milton's belief align most closely? Option C. सेपरेटिस्ट। मिल्टन की धार्मिक मान्यताएं कांग्रेसनलिस्ट इंडिपेंडेंस के से सबसे अधिक मेल खाती थी। वे एंग्लिकन चर्च के पदानुक्रमित संरचना मीन्स हायरार्किकल स्ट्रक्चर का विरोध करते थे और मानते थे कि प्रत्येक मंडली को किसी केंद्रीय सत्ता से स्वतंत्र होना चाहिए। What does the last line of one of Milton's sonnet, "As ever in my great task, master eyes," signify? Option B. His rejection of religious authority in favor of individual spiritual liberty. The line "as ever is in my great task, master I" from Milton's sonnet signifies his belief in that he was always under God's watchful gaze rather than the authority of any church institution that reflected his Puritan ideals of personal responsibility and spiritual independence. मिल्टन ने अपनी कविता में मिल्टन की कविता इस विचार को दर्शाती है कि वे हमेशा ईश्वर के दृष्टि में हैं, न कि चर्च के संगठन की सत्ता में। यह उनके निजी उत्तरदायित्व और आध्यात्मिक स्वतंत्रता के प्यूरिटन आदर्शों को दर्शाता है। नेक्स्ट, व्हाट डिड मिल्टन डू आफ्टर लीविंग कैम्ब्रिज इन 1632? Option C. Retired to his father's country home in Horton for 6 years of intensive study. Retired to his father's country home in Horton for 6 years of intensive study. After leaving Cambridge in 1632, Milton did not take up a profession immediately. Instead, he retired to his father's estate in Horton, where he spent 6 years studying literature, philosophy, theology, history, and languages. This period was crucial in shaping his intellectual foundation. कैम्ब्रिज छोड़ने के बाद मिल्टन ने तुरंत कोई प्रोफेशन नहीं अपनाया। इसके बजाय वे अपने पिता के हॉर्टन उपस्थित जागीर में चले गए, जहां उन्होंने 6 वर्षों तक साहित्य, दर्शन, धर्मशास्त्र, इतिहास और भाषाओं का गहन अध्ययन किया। यह समय उनके बौद्धिक विकास के लिए महत्वपूर्ण था। Which subject did Milton studying during his 6 years of solitary learning? Option B. Greek, Latin, Hebrew, Spanish, French, Italian, science, mathematics, and music. During his 6 years of study, Milton mastered multiple languages: Greek, Latin, Hebrew, Spanish, French, and Italian, and also studied subjects like science, mathematics, and music. His extensive learning helped shape his poetic and prose style. Next, how did Milton's love for music influence his literary style? Option A. It made his poetry melodious and added rhythmic balance to his prose. Milton had a deep love for music, which influenced the musicality of his poetry. His lines often have a natural rhythmic flow, and his prose is known for its balanced, harmonious structure, much like musical compositions. Next, which of the following works were written by Milton during his retirement at Horton? Horton period 1632 32 to 1638 or 37. Milton devoted himself to poetry and study. It was during this period that he wrote several of his early major works, including El Allegro, a celebration of joy and mirth, Il Penseroso, a contemplation of a more thoughtful melancholic life, Comus, a masque promoting virtue, Arcades, a pastoral work, Lycidas, a pastoral elegy for his friend Edward King, several sonnets. These works reflect Milton's intellectual maturity and poetic craftsmanship before his later political writings and epics. Next, during his travels, Milton won the friendship of which famous scholar in Paris, Grotius. 1638 में पेरिस की यात्रा के दौरान मिल्टन की मुलाकात प्रसिद्ध डच विद्वान ह्यूगो ग्रोटियस से हुई और वे उनके मित्र बन गए। ग्रोटियस एक प्रमुख विधिवेत्ता, धर्मशास्त्री और मानवतावादी विचारक थे। उन्होंने अंतर्राष्ट्रीय कानून और धर्म पर महत्वपूर्ण कार्य किए जो यूरोपीय बौद्धिक इतिहास में प्रभावशाली रहे हैं। मिल्टन ने ग्रोटियस के राजनीतिक और धार्मिक विचारों की सराहना की, जिसने उनके स्वयं के दृष्टिकोण को आकार देने में मदद की। Next, what is the central theme of Paradise Regained? Option B, the redemption of mankind through Christ's triumph over temptation. The central theme of Paradise Regained is Christ's triumph over Satan's temptations, which symbolize the redemption of mankind. Unlike Paradise Lost, which focuses on humanity fall, this poem highlights how Christ resisted Satan's temptation in the wilderness, thereby restoring hope and righteousness. Next, what biblical events does Paradise Regained primarily focus on? Option B, Christ's temptation in the wilderness. Paradise Regained primarily focuses on the biblical account of Christ's temptation in the wilderness. पैराडाइज रिगेन्ड मुख्य रूप से बाइबल में वर्णित मसीह के ईसा मसीह मीन्स क्राइस्ट जंगल में प्रलोभनों पर केंद्रित है। द पोएम डिटेल्स हाउ सैटन टेम्प्ट्स Christ with food, power, and wrong worldly glory, but Christ remains steadfast and overcomes the trials, proving his divine strength. इस कविता में बताया गया है कि कैसे सैटन भोजन, सत्ता और सांसारिक वैभव के माध्यम से क्राइस्ट को लुभाने की कोशिश करता है, लेकिन क्राइस्ट अडिग रहते हैं और उन सभी परीक्षाओं को पार करके अपनी दिव्य शक्ति प्रूविंग हिज डिवाइन स्ट्रेंथ, अपनी दिव्य शक्ति को सिद्ध करते हैं। How does Paradise Regained contrast with Paradise Lost? Option A, it focuses on Christ's victory rather than mankind's fall. While Paradise Lost narrates the fall of Adam and Eve, Paradise Regained serves as a sequel, as shifts the focus to Christ's victory over temptation. This contrast represents the restoration of divine order, where Christ's steadfastness redeems with what Adam lost. जहां पैराडाइज लॉस्ट में एडम और ईव के पतन की कहानी, जहां पैराडाइज लॉस्ट एडम और ईव के पतन की कहानी कहता है, वहीं पैराडाइज रिगेन्ड मसीह क्राइस्ट की विजय पर केंद्रित है। यह कविता पैराडाइज लॉस्ट की उत्तर कथा के रूप में कार्य करती है और दिखाती है कि कैसे क्राइस्ट का अटल धैर्य उस चीज को पुनः स्थापित करता है जिसे एडम ने खो दिया था। Why did Milton prefer Paradise Regained over Paradise Lost? Option A. It had a more hopeful and redemptive message. Milton preferred Paradise Regained over Paradise Lost because it carried a more optimistic and redemptive themes. While Paradise Lost centers on mankind, fall and suffering, Paradise Regained highlights Christ's victory over Satan, offering a sense of hope and restoration. मिल्टन को पैराडाइज रिगेन्ड पैराडाइज लॉस्ट से अधिक प्रिय था क्योंकि इसमें आशावादी और उद्धार का संदेश था। पैराडाइज लॉस्ट जहां मानव जाति के पतन पर केंद्रित है, वहीं पैराडाइज रिगेन्ड क्राइस्ट की विक्ट्री को दर्शाता है, जिसमें उम्मीद और पुनः स्थापन का भाव उत्पन्न होता है। नेक्स्ट, what inspired Milton to write Paradise Regained? Option A. A suggestion from his friend Thomas Elwood. Milton was inspired to write Paradise Regained after his friend Thomas Elwood read Paradise Lost and remarked, "Thou hast said much here for of Paradise Lost, but what hast thou to say of Paradise Found?" This question motivated Milton to compose Paradise Regained as a sequel. मिल्टन को पैराडाइज रिगेन्ड लिखने की प्रेरणा अपने मित्र थॉमस एलवुड से मिली। जब एलवुड ने पैराडाइज लॉस्ट को पढ़ा तो उन्होंने टिप्पणी की, "Thou hast said must hear of Paradise Lost, but what hast thou to say of Paradise Found?" तुमने बहुत कुछ स्वर्ग में खो दिया के बारे में तो लिखा, लेकिन स्वर्ग पुनः प्राप्त के बारे में क्या लिखा? इस प्रश्न ने मिल्टन को पैराडाइज रिगेन्ड लिखने के लिए प्रेरित किया। नेक्स्ट, व्हाट डिस्टिंग्विश सैमसन एगोनिस्ट फ्रॉम मिल्टन्स अदर मेजर वर्क्स? Option A. It is written in the form of a Greek tragedy. Unlike Paradise Lost and Paradise Regained, Samson Agonist is structured like a Greek tragedy. It follows the Aristotelian unities of time, place, and action, and include a tragic hero, a chorus, and moral conflict, resembling play by Sophocles and Aeschylus. पैराडाइज लॉस्ट और पैराडाइज रिगेन्ड से अलग सैमसन अगोनिस्ट एक ग्रीक ट्रेजेडी के रूप में लिखी गई है। यह समय, स्थान और क्रिया की एकता के नियमों का पालन करती है और इसमें एक दुखद नायक, कोरस और नैतिक संघर्ष होता है जो सोफोक्लिस और एस्किलस के नाटकों से मिलता जुलता है। How does Milton personally relate to Samson Agonist? Option A. He saw himself as a betrayed leader like Samson. Milton personally related to Samson, and as both he and the biblical figure suffered betrayal, blindness, and a fall of power. Like Samson, Milton lost his political influence after the restoration of the monarchy, and his blindness and isolation made him identify with the tragic hero. मिल्टन ने स्वयं को सैमसन की तरह एक विश्वासघात किए गए नेता के रूप में देखा। दोनों को ब्लाइंडनेस, विश्वासघात और शक्ति से पतन का सामना करना पड़ा। इंग्लैंड में राजशाही की बहाली रेस्टोरेशन के बाद मिल्टन ने अपना राजनीतिक प्रभाव खो दिया और अंधेपन और अलगाव के कारण उन्होंने इस दुखद नायक के साथ गहरी समानता महसूस की। नेक्स्ट, what aspect of Greek tragedy does Samson agonist embody? Option B, the depiction of a tragic hero facing downfall. Samson agonist embodies the Greek tragic tradition by portraying a hero who faces downfall due to fate and personal flaws. Like tragic figures in Greek drama, Samson struggles with internal conflict, suffering, and ultimate redemption, making the play its true tragedy. सैमसन ऑगनिस्ट ग्रीक ट्रेजेडी की परंपरा का पालन करता है, जिसमें एक नायक अपने भाग्य और व्यक्तिगत दोषों के कारण पतन की ओर बढ़ता है। ग्रीक नाटकों में दुखद पात्रों की तरह सैमसन को भी आंतरिक संघर्ष, पीड़ा और अंततः मोक्ष का सामना करना पड़ता है, जिससे यह कृति एक सच्ची ट्रेजेडी बन जाती है। What is a key similarity between Samson Agonist and Milton himself? Option A, both were blind and suffered misfortune. A key similarity between Samson and Milton is that both were blind and endured misfortune. Samson, the biblical hero, lost his strength and was captured by his enemies, while Milton lost his sight and suffered political downfall after the restoration. Which of the following is true about Samson agonists? Option B, it was written in the style of a Greek tragedy. Samson Agonist is written in the style of a Greek tragedy. Following the classical unities of time, place, and action, it features a tragic hero chorus and moral conflict, similar to the works of Sophocles and Aeschylus. Who among the following poets is considered the most significant literary figure of the Puritan age? Option B, John Milton. John Milton is regarded as the most significant literary figure of the Puritan age. His works, especially Paradise Lost, Paradise Regained, and Areopagitica, reflect Puritan ideals and intellectual depth, making him the dominant poet of the era. Which of the following works is considered is the only great epic in English literature since Beowulf? Option C, Paradise Lost. Paradise Lost is the only great epic in English literature since Beowulf. It is a grand epic poem that deals with the fall of man, Saturn's rebellion, and divine justice, solidifying Milton's place and as one of the greatest poets. In which year was Milton's Paradise Lost published? Option B, 1667. John Milton's Paradise Lost was first published in 1667 in 10 books. Later in 1674, it was revised and published in 12 books, following the classical epic structure. 1667 in 10 books, 1674 in 12 books, Who in Paradise Lost volunteers to tempt Adam and Eve and corrupts mankind? Option C, Saturn. In Paradise Lost, Saturn volunteers to tempt Adam and Eve and corrupt mankind. After the fall of the rebel angels, he takes it upon himself to leave hell, enter Eden, and deceive humanity. Which angel warns Adam and Eve about Satan's intentions in Paradise Lost? Option B, Raphael. Archangel Raphael warns Adam and Eve about Satan's intentions in Paradise Lost. He visits Adam to educate him but about the dangers of disobedience and the consequences of Satan's deception. पैराडाइज लॉस्ट में रॉफेल एडम और ईव को सैटन के इरादों के बारे में चेतावनी देता है और एडम से मिलता है और उसे अवज्ञा के खतरों और शैतान की चालबाजियों के परिणामों के बारे में बताता है. नेक्स्ट, what form of poetry did Milton use in Paradise Lost? Option C, blank verse. Milton wrote Paradise Lost in blank verse, which consist of unrhymed iambic pentameter. This poetic form gives the epic a grand and flowing style, making it more dramatic and elevated. In which book of Paradise Lost does the actual temptation of Eve take place? Book 9. The actual temptation of Eve takes place in Book 9 of Paradise Lost. Here Satan, disguised as a serpent, deceives Eve into eating the forbidden fruit, leading to the fall of mankind. What is pandemonium in Paradise Lost? Option B, the capital of hell. In Paradise Lost, pandemonium is the capital of hell. It is described as a massive place built by the fallen angels where Satan and his followers hold council after their expulsion from heaven. Which of the following themes is not central to Paradise Lost? Option C, the divine right of kings. While Paradise Lost explores themes like the fall of man, Satan's rebellion, and the justification of God's ways, it does not support the divine right of kings, a political theory that Milton opposed. Paradise Lost Milton Areopagitica is best known for advocating which of the following? Option B, the freedom of the press. Milton Areopagitica is one of the most famous defenses of freedom of the press. He argued against government censorship, emphasizing that truth be allowed to compete with falsehood. मिल्टन की एरियोपेजिटिका स्वतंत्र फ्रीडम ऑफ प्रेस के समर्थन में लिखी गई एक प्रसिद्ध रचना है. इसमें उन्होंने सरकारी सेंसरशिप का विरोध किया और तर्क दिया कि सत्य को असत्य के साथ प्रतिस्पर्धा करने दिया जाना चाहिए। What does Milton refer to when he speaks of heavenly muse in the opening lines of Paradise Lost? Option A, the Holy Spirit. In Paradise Lost, the heavenly muse refers to Holy Spirit. Milton invokes divine inspiration following the classical tradition of poets calling of muses for guidance. In Paradise Lost, what is the ultimate fate of Adam and Eve? Option C, they are banished from paradise. Adam and Eve are ultimately banished from Eden as punishment for their sin. However, they live but with the hope of redemption through God's mercy. Which of the following best describes the structure of Paradise Lost? Option C, a collection of sonnets. Option B, a 12-book epic poems poem. Paradise Lost was originally written in 10 books but later revised into a 12-book epic poem following the structure of classical epic like Virgil Aeneid. Who is the last archangel to speak to Adam in Paradise Lost? Option C, Michael. The archangel Michael is the last angel to speak to Adam in Paradise Lost. He reveals future events, including the coming of Christ before escorting Adam and Eve out of Eden. Milton's depiction of Satan in Paradise Lost has often led critics to describe him as a symbol of which of the following? Option A, heroic rebellion. Milton's depiction of Satan as a charismatic and determined figure has led to some critics to see him as a symbol of heroic rebellion against tyranny. However, others argue that his heroism is flawed because it leads to destruction. In Paradise Lost, what is the primary reason for Satan's rebellion? Option B, his refusal to serve God. Satan's rebellion in Paradise Lost is primarily driven by his refusal to submit to God. He believes it is better to reign in hell than serve in heaven, demonstrating his excessive pride, hubris. पैराडाइज लॉस्ट में सैटन का विद्रोह मुख्य रूप से ईश्वर की सेवा करने से इनकार रिफ्यूजल टू सर्व गॉड के कारण हुआ। वह कहता है स्वर्ग में सेवा करने से बेहतर है कि नर्क में राज्य किया जाए, जो उसके अहंकार को दर्शाता है। What literary device does Milton frequently use in Paradise Lost to begin the narrative in the middle of the action? Option B, in medias res. Milton begins Paradise Lost in medias res, meaning in the middle of the things. The story starts after Saturn's fall with flashback explaining past events and a technique common in epic poetry. मिल्टन पैराडाइज लॉस्ट की शुरुआत में मीडियस रेस टेक्निक से करते हैं, जिसका अर्थ है घटनाओं के बीच से आरंभ। कहानी सैटर्न के पतन के बाद से शुरू होती है और पूर्व की घटनाओं को बाद में फ्लैशबैक में बताया जाता है। Which of the following books of Paradise Lost describes the war in heaven? Option 6. Option C. Book 6. The war in heaven between God's angels and Satan's rebellious forces is described in Book 6 of Paradise Lost. It details how Satan and his followers are ultimately defeated and cast into hell. स्वर्ग में ईश्वर के स्वर्गदूतों और शैतान के विद्रोही दूतों के बीच युद्ध का वर्णन वार इन हेवन पैराडाइज लॉस्ट के छठे बुक में मिलता है। इसमें दिखाया गया है कि कैसे सैटन और उसके अनुयायियों को पराजित कर नर्क से फेंक दिया जाता है। What does Milton emphasizes as Adam and Eve tragic flaw in Paradise Lost? Pride. Adam and Eve tragic flaw is Paradise Lost is pride. Eve desires for knowledge and Adam's decision to eat the forbidden fruit out of love lead to their downfall. What is the final scene of Paradise Lost? Option C. Adam and Eve departure from Eden. The final scene of Paradise Lost depicts Adam and Eve leaving the Garden of Eden after their fall. They walk out hand in hand with a sense of sorrow but also hope of redemption guided by angel Michael. पैराडाइज लॉस्ट का अंतिम दृश्य एडम और ईव के ईडन से निष्कासन को दर्शाता है। वे दुखी लेकिन भविष्य में पुनर्वास की आशा रखते हैं। Which of the following aspects of Milton's writing in Paradise Lost distinguish it from the biblical account of creation? Option B. Its poetic imagery and descriptions. While Paradise Lost is based on biblical account of creation, it is distinguished by its rich poetic imagery, grand descriptions, and epic style that expand upon the original scripture. Which literary device is most evident in Milton's description of the evening in Paradise Lost? The option B. Epic simile. Milton frequently employs epic similes in Paradise Lost using elaborate and extended comparisons to describe nature, emotion, and divine events with great depth. Next, how does Milton's portrayal of God in Paradise Lost reflect the influence of his time? Option C. It aligns with the rigid and authoritarian Puritan doctrines. Milton's Puritan belief influenced his portrayal of God in Paradise Lost. God is depicted as a just, sovereign, and authoritative ruler, reflecting Puritan ideas of justice, of divine justice, and predestination. मिल्टन की प्यूरिटन विचारधारा में उनके पैराडाइज लॉस्ट में ईश्वर के चित्रण को प्रभावित करती है। यहाँ ईश्वर को न्याय प्रिय, संप्रभु और कठोर शासक के रूप में दिखाया गया है, जो प्यूरिटन सिद्धांतों से मेल खाता है। नेक्स्ट, which of the following lines from Paradise Lost best demonstrates Milton's poetic grandeur? Option B. See all night long her amorous descent sung, silence was pleased. This line from Paradise Lost is an example of the Milton's poetic grandeur, combining musical imagery, deep emotion, and powerful description to enhance the epic beauty. यह पंक्ति पैराडाइज लॉस्ट की काव्यात्मक भव्यता, पोइटिक ग्रैंड्योर को दर्शाती है, जिसमें संगीतमयी कल्पनात्मक, भावनात्मक गहराई और प्रभावशाली वर्णन का उपयोग किया गया है। In Paradise Lost, how does Milton portrayal of Satan differ from traditional medieval conceptions of the devils? Option B. Satan is portrayed as a tragic and charismatic figure. Unlike the traditional medieval depiction of Satan as purely evil, Milton presents him as a complex and tragic figure with ambition, pride, and even moments of heroic grandeur, making him one of literature's most intriguing anti-heroes. Which quality of Satan in Paradise Lost has led some critics to view him as a hero? Option C. His defiance and perseverance despite defeat. Satan's unbreakable and determination. Will and determination in the face of the defeat have led some critics to interrupt him as a Byronic hero, one who fights against overwhelming odds despite knowing he cannot win. सैटर्न की अडिग इच्छा शक्ति और हार के बावजूद संघर्ष करने की प्रवृत्ति ने कुछ आलोचकों को उसे बायरोनिक नायक के रूप में देखने के लिए प्रेरित किया, जो कि हार के बावजूद भी लड़ता रहता है। In the passage where Saturn says in this the rain, this is the soil that climb, what is the primary emotion conveyed? Option C, defiance and resilience. In the passage, Saturn questions his fallen state, but does so with a tone of defense rather than despair, showing his unyielding spirit and refusal to submit. सैटर्न अपने पराजित होने पर प्रश्न उठाता है, लेकिन यह प्रश्न निराशा से अधिक विद्रोह और आत्मविश्वास को दर्शाता है, जो उसके अडिग स्वभाव को दर्शाता है। What is the significance of the phrase "Hail horrors"? Hail informal words. It's in Saturn's speech. Option B. It demonstrates his ability to find strength and adversity. By embracing hell instead of lamenting his fall, Saturn demonstrates his resilience and refusal to accept defeat, showing his ability to adapt and find power even in suffering. सैटर्न नर्क को स्वीकार करता है बजाय इसके कि वह अपनी पराजय पर विलाप करे। यह उसके संघर्षशील स्वभाव और कठिनाइयों में भी शक्ति खोजने की क्षमता को दर्शाता है। नेक्स्ट, which of the following best describes Milton's depiction of the Almighty in Paradise Lost? Option A, a benevolent and loving father. Milton portrays God as a just and loving father who allows free will and provides opportunities of redemption. Though his justice demands punishment for disobedience. मिल्टन ईश्वर को एक दयालु और न्यायप्रिय पिता के रूप में चित्रित करते हैं जो मुक्त इच्छा फ्री विल की अनुमति देते हैं, लेकिन उनकी न्यायप्रियता अवज्ञा करने वाले को दंडित भी करते हैं। What effects does Milton's views of grand, vivid imagery have in Paradise Lost? Option B. It enhances the epic's dramatic and emotional impact. Milton's grand, vivid imagery elevates Paradise Lost to the level of a classic epic, making its themes more powerful and emotions more intense. His use of elaborate epic similes and descriptive passages create a majestic and immersive experience for the reader. मिल्टन की विशाल और जीवंत कल्पना पैराडाइज लॉस्ट को एक महान महाकाव्य बना देती है। उनके विस्तृत एपिक सिमिलीज और गहरे वर्णन पाठक को एक भव्य और भावनात्मक अनुभव प्रदान करते हैं। नेक्स्ट, in Paradise Lost, what symbolic contrast is created between hell and heaven? Heaven and hell. Option A. Heaven represents harmony and divine order, while hell embodies chaos and despair. Milton contrasts heaven's perfection, peace, and divine rule with hell's disorder, suffering, and rebellion, reinforcing the moral and theological conflict central to the poem. मिल्टन स्वर्ग को दिव्य अनुशासन और शांति का प्रतीक मानते हैं, जबकि नर्क को अराजकता और निराशा का रूप देते हैं। यह महाकाव्य की नैतिक और धार्मिक संघर्ष को प्रकट करता है। नेक्स्ट, why does Saturn claim that farther from him is best in his speech? Option D. He wants to establish a new kingdom independent of God. Saturn refuses to submit to God's rules and instead desires to create his own dominion in hell, even though he acknowledges that he can never truly rival God's power. सैटर्न ईश्वर के शासन को अस्वीकार कर देता है और अपना अलग साम्राज्य स्थापित करता है, भले ही वह जानता हो कि वह कभी भी ईश्वर के बराबर नहीं हो सकता है। Which of the following is a major theme of In Paradise Lost? Option B. The nature of free will and predestination. One of the major themes of In Paradise Lost is the tension between free will and divine predestination. whether humanity has true choice or if everything is preordained by God. Preordained by God. पैराडाइज लॉस्ट एक प्रमुख विषय मुक्त इच्छा, फ्री विल और प्रीडेस्टिनेशन पूर्व नियति के बीच एक संघर्ष है। क्या मनुष्य के पास वास्तविक चुनाव है या सब ईश्वर द्वारा पहले से तय किया गया है? Preordained by God. Next, what is the significance of Milton's blank verse style in Paradise Lost? Option C. It creates a flowing musical quality fitting for an epic poem. Milton blank verse unrhymed iambic pentameter gives Paradise Lost a majestic and musical rhythm, making it both grand and flexible, perfect for an epic. How does Milton use of epic similes contribute to Paradise Lost? Option B. It adds depth and grandeur to the narrative. Milton's epic similes, extended comparisons, enhance the poem's vivid imagery, making sense more dramatic and powerful, and proving historical and mythological depth. What does Saturn mean by the famous line, "The mind is its own place and in itself can make a heaven of hell, a hell of heaven"? Option B. One's state of mind defines their reality. Saturn argues that perception shapes experience. Even in hell, he can think like a ruler, just as someone in hell could feel trapped. सैटर्न का मानना है कि मानसिक अवस्था वास्तविकता को परिभाषित करती है। अगर मनुष्य चाहे तो नर्क को स्वर्ग और स्वर्ग को नर्क मान सकता है। इज दिस पॉसिबल? What is the significance of the statement better to reign in heaven, hell, and serve in heaven? Option A. It reflects the Saturn pride and ambition. Saturn's declaration expresses his pride and unwillingness to submit, embodying the themes of defiance and personal freedom even at great cost. यह वाक्य सैटर्न के अहंकार और महत्वाकांक्षा को दर्शाता है, जो विद्रोह और व्यक्तिगत स्वतंत्रता के विषय को प्रकट करता है, चाहे इसमें इसका कोई मूल्य हो, चाहे इसका कोई भी मूल्य हो, means at any cost and at any rate. How does Milton portrayal of Saturn reflect the Puritan spirit? Option B. It mirrors the Puritan defense against tyranny. Milton's Puritan background influenced his portrayal of Saturn as a rebellious figure, paralleling Puritan resistance against monarchy and oppression. Next, understanding Paradise Lost requires knowledge of which two major influence. Option C. The Old Testament and Calvinist theology. Paradise Lost is deeply influenced by the Old Testament narrative of creation and the fall of Calvinist beliefs about predestination, divine justice, and free will. Why is Paradise Lost often compared to Dante Divine Comedy? Option A. Both explored religious themes in epic poetry. Both Paradise Lost and Divine Comedy are epic poems that explore Christian theology, sin, redemption, and the afterlife, but from different theological perspectives. How does Paradise Regained differ in its central theme from Paradise Lost? Option A. It focuses on the redemption of mankind rather than the fall. Unlike Paradise Lost, which focuses on the fall of Adam and Eve, Paradise Regained emphasizes Christ's triumph over Satan, symbolizing mankind's redemption. What even in Paradise Regained serves as a counterpoint to Adam's failure in Paradise Lost? Option C. Christ's rejection of Satan's temptations. In Paradise Lost, Adam's failure leads to mankind's downfall, whereas in Paradise Regained, Christ's resistance to Satan's temptations symbolizing humanity redemption. What prompted Milton to write Paradise Regained? Option A suggestion from his friend Thomas Elwood. Milton's friend Thomas Elwood, after reading Paradise Lost, asked, "But what about the sequel?" This inspired Milton to write Paradise Regained. What theme unities both Paradise Lost and Paradise Regained? Option A. The struggle between free will and divine authority. Both Paradise Lost and Paradise Regained explored human free will versus God's sovereignty. Paradise Lost shows how misusing free will leads to the fall, while Paradise Regained demonstrates how submitting to divine authority leads to redemption. Which literary device does Milton frequently use to enhance the grandeur of his epic poetry? Option B. Blank verse. Milton wrote Paradise Lost in blank verse, unrhymed iambic pentameter, which gives the poem a grand, flowing style and fitting for an epic. Why is Paradise Lost considered one of the greatest work in English literature? Option C. It combines theological depth and poetic grandeur. Paradise Lost is considered of the greatest work in English literature because it blends complex theological themes with rich, vivid poetry, making it both intellectually and artistically profound. पैराडाइज लॉस्ट को अंग्रेजी साहित्य का महानतम कृतियों में से एक माना जाता है क्योंकि यह जटिल धार्मिक विचारों को समृद्ध और प्रभावशाली काव्य शैली के साथ प्रस्तुत करता है जिसमें यह बौद्धिक और कलात्मक दोनों रूपों से गहरा प्रभाव छोड़ता है. सेकंड लास्ट क्वेश्चन. What distinguishes Paradise Regained from Paradise Lost it in terms of narrative style? Option A. It is shorter and more focused on a single event. Unlike Paradise Lost, which spans the creation, fall, and consequences, Paradise Regained is shorter and focuses only on Christ's temptation in the wilderness. पैराडाइज लॉस्ट की तुलना में जो सृष्टि पतन और उसके परिणामों को कवर करता है, पैराडाइज रिगेन्ड छोटा है और केवल क्राइस्ट के रेगिस्तान में हुए प्रलोभन पर केंद्रित है। नेक्स्ट एंड लास्ट क्वेश्चन, व्हाट इज द सेंट्रल थीम ऑफ पैराडाइज रिगेन्ड? Option B, the redemption of mankind through Christ's triumph over temptation. Paradise Regained centers on Christ resisting Satan's temptation, symbolizing the redemption of humanity and reversing Adam's failure in Paradise Lost. Paradise Regained में मुख्य रूप से क्राइस्ट के सैटन के प्रलोभनों का विरोध करने को दर्शाया गया है, जो मानवता के उद्धार और पैराडाइज लॉस्ट में एडम की सफलता को पलटने का प्रतीक है। I hope you like this video. As we conclude this journey through Milton's genius, let his words ignite our minds and souls. His epic verses challenges, inspire and endure beyond time. Thank you for watching. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, share and subscribe to this channel. Stay tuned for more informative content and make sure to hit the bell icon to never miss an update. See you in the next video with next writer. Thank you.